Hi, this is Dave Whalen, founder of the Worship Recording Academy. So I actually founded the Worship Recording Academy because of all the worship leaders and singer-songwriters that I've met over the years who really just need to know how to record their own music. They may not have money to go to the studio, pay a bunch of money for that, or they just have ideas that they need to get down right away and to be able to release. So what I did was, I have a friend Sam who's in that same position, and he wanted to record his own music. So what we did was we recorded Psalm 77, which is a song that he wrote, and we just walked him through it step by step. He asked questions along the way and reminded me of maybe some of the things that I don't know that he didn't know. And so we actually covered a lot of ground in the whole recording process. We did vocals, guitars, drums, keyboards. In this video, I actually interviewed him to hear about like some of the things that he's learned along the way, some of the stumbling blocks that he's encountered, just to get a feel for the benefits that he's received and what he's learned through his time doing the Worship Recording Academy. So, so this next bit is an interview with him. I hope you find it I hope you find it informative. I hope you find it useful, maybe even entertaining. I think we're pretty hilarious myself. So if you've already seen enough, you could go to worshiprecordingacademy.com/memberships and sign up for the beta membership, which is a special deal that we have going on as we launch, which will actually give you access to everything we do in the future. We've got a mixing academy and a producing academy that I'm working on right now. So the 3 courses so far will cover the whole gamut from pre-production through recording all the way through your final mix and master. And then after that, I have some special stuff planned on publishing. So go ahead and head to worshiprecordingacademy.com/memberships. If you haven't yet been able to check out my 10 steps to awesome worship recordings, go ahead and head to worshiprecordingacademy.com/10 steps, and you'll get a free video training for 10 steps to awesome worship recordings. I made that as informative as I can make it. So check that out. It's free, and enjoy the interview. Well, let's see how it goes. So I'm Dave. This is my friend Sam. And we recorded his song, Psalm 77, on this stage in this room for the most part. And I've got a small studio elsewhere that we did some vocals, but Sam is new to this. So the idea behind the course was that I could walk him through the whole process, and hopefully teach him something. So I got Sam here, and we're gonna find out how it went. So Sam, how much experience did you have coming into this process?
Yeah, it's a good question. I had very minimal experience, so I knew just the bare basics on how to work a DAW, the recording process, standard editing, clipping stuff, how to loop stuff. But as far as the mixing, I had little to no experience at all.
Okay, what about the recording aspect? Like actually capturing the audio?
Capturing audio, I had a very basic understanding of vocals and using MIDI. But as far as using any type of audio recording with drums or guitar or electric guitar or anything like that, I had zero experience.
Okay. So how would you say this process has helped you understand how to capture audio?
Yes, simply put, I went from not knowing how to use recording equipment for guitars, whether acoustic, electric, or drums, to I'm now recording all that stuff just on my own in the church as I get opportunity to.
Did this course teach you how to effectively use the equipment that we already have here at the church to capture your recordings?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. For example, using just the mixing board, using the microphones that we have different, the SM57s or using an SM7B and all that kind of stuff has been very helpful, very useful. So I'm way more adequate at it than I was before.
Way more adequate. I would describe myself as adequate. What do you think was the most helpful thing that you learned here that you weren't able to do before?
That is hard to just put down into one particular item. I would say just the entire process from recording to mixing to mastering. I went from literally not knowing how to do really barely the basics to I feel pretty competent for the most part producing and doing my own song in a studio or at a church, in a church setting.
To a lot of people, this process seems like it's wrapped in a lot of mystery and can seem overwhelming because there's just so many technical things that you have to know and there's so many techniques that you have to know. Would you say that's where you were at?
Absolutely. Yes, there's nothing really in life that you can kind of grab onto to say, oh yeah, I can look at that and see the comparisons in recording. There's really not that. So when you're getting into this, it's all fairly new. But as you go along and as you've been teaching it to me, there's just these basic fundamentals that you have to learn, and that kind of just that fills into the entire process. So I went from reluctant to even get started, but as soon as you started teaching me the basics, it was relatively simple at the basic level, and at that point I can just start tweaking things and listening to what sounds better and move and start producing your music to a point where you're quite literally throwing it onto iTunes at some point. So very helpful.
So what equipment did you use?
I personally have used after what we did together. I use a Scarlett Focusrite, just a little. So it's a little guy, a couple of channels in there. I also use a MacBook Pro and just a Shure SM7B, and then I have my MIDI keyboard that I use. But we have the baby grand piano at the church that I quite literally mic'd up in less than 10 minutes and had a full song recorded on the piano, multiple takes in less than an hour. So I've used that kind of stuff. And then we have a variety of equipment at our church, such as a drum set that hooks right up to the mixer. I was able to record drums several times through that, but that's quite literally all I use is equipment that was already available at the church, and a few $100s, I think maybe $500 worth of equipment at home.
So you mentioned the drum set that's already mic'd up for our services. So before, when you were using MIDI drums,
Yes.
you weren't satisfied with what you were getting out of the MIDI drums, right? It just wasn't very realistic.
No, absolutely not.
And so you're just using the stock sounds that come with Logic. So there are different sounds out there which are, you can spend as much as you want on drum sounds. But now you can just climb in the box and go to the mixer, hook it up to your computer, and hit record.
That easy.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty game changing when you understand that the equipment that most churches have already is ready to record you.
Yeah.
You just have to know how to hook it up to your computer and hit record.
Absolutely. And the irony is that doing it at a church setting is actually faster than using a MIDI. You use your fingers and you can play around with it, but you only have so much room that you can use. And going through multiple takes and doing your crashes and doing your hi-hats. Here you literally set up a USB-C to your computer, select the channels and route it all correctly, and I'm ready to record like that quick, and I don't have to worry about, I'm gonna do crash this time through, I'm gonna do the kick this time through, I'll do the snare. I can do the whole thing all the way through in one take. And it's really game changing, and it's honestly faster.
Yeah, and it sounds like a person playing.
Yes.
And not not
a computer
finger keyboarding it.
Yeah.
So just for clarification, in the course we actually took the drum set behind me and set it up right out in the middle of the room and used some room mics and actually got a really nice sound out of the room mics. So we didn't keep it in the box, but Sam, whenever he just wants to throw down a quick drum track, he just hops in the box and hits record, and he's good to go. Everything in there is properly phase aligned, and it's just good to go. Just don't let him tune the drums, and everything's good.
One time.
Just the once.
That's
all it took.
The last time.
So you've worked on more of your projects since we recorded Psalm 77. What did you learn that you've been able to apply, and do you find it easier to record and mix and master?
Yes, so a lot of the material you covered in the chorus provided a lot more realism to what is being played. So I'm trying to pull away a lot more from MIDI and just get more of the actual player inside the recording. So knowing how to record acoustic on a live, knowing how to do electric guitar live, knowing how to do drums live, piano live, all that stuff provides way more genuine sound to what I'm actually playing. Some other things that you taught just with audio levels, right? Just how I can pull things up in the actual mixing process as opposed to trying to nail it so perfectly on the recording process. That's been very helpful. And then the other key things that you've shown is just when I am doing recording, I want to record like I'm not going to mix, and I want to mix like I'm not going to master. So that's really changed how I've approached the entire process. MIDI, you can get away with just kind of playing whatever you want and just pull things around, and it starts to sound less genuine. It's not less real. When doing the audio aspect of it, it provides way more authenticity to what I'm playing, and so I approach the project that way and bring out a more authentic sound as opposed to a computer-driven sound, akin to something that you might listen to at Chick-fil-A. And that's not a hit on Chick-fil-A, but that's the kind of music they play. It's very robotic. It's not what you want to be. It's not genuine. It's not what you want to be giving to the Lord, you know?
Yeah. So just to clarify on that, so in Psalm 77, we used a lot of orchestration, and we use a lot of sounds that were programmed with MIDI. I would say probably about half was programmed with MIDI. But we use so many human elements, we use as many human elements as we can in the song so that it still has a human feel to it, right? So we're still playing to a click, but we don't snap everything right to the click track. Like, it's not super tight.
Yeah.
Because if I'm playing a song, I don't want to sound like a robot. It's me playing the song.
Yeah, that's good.
And a lot of especially as you get into metal, very technical things, they're going to snap everything right to the grid. But I even a lot of the worship music, you could put that to a metronome and it's right on. But I like to have a little bit of that push and pull in front of the metronome, behind the metronome.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very organic feeling, but you can snap it to the grid if you like. Anyway, so this isn't a knock on MIDI programming.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah.
Because we use it a lot.
Right.
In production, especially since we don't have a full orchestra that we can use. But we do maximize the human elements that we're using so that it still sounds real and genuine.
Yeah. Well, it takes off the pressure too in the recording process. That you're like, I have to nail this absolutely perfectly for it to be a good song. That's not the reality of the situation. And that was seen in that and what we played with Psalm 77. And I'm seeing that with the other stuff that I'm recording. It's like I used to be so just very specific on making sure that everything was right on time, and it honestly it took away the ability to just play it the way that I want to play it. And seeing the way that Psalm 77 came out and the way these other songs are coming out, that's just not the case, and it still sounds great. It still sounds excellent. So.
Yeah, that was one thing that I noticed. So I've been doing this a long time. I forget the things that other people don't know.
Yeah.
It's like with anything, right? You just know what you know, and then you forget what you had to learn.
Yeah.
And it reminded me that people so often think that everything has to be perfect.
Yeah.
right? So like every bit of this piano part has to be perfect, it has to be perfectly in time, the levels have to be perfect. So what I emphasize is that there is a lot of leeway.
Yeah.
Like you get a lot of wiggle room in there, because like when you start stacking sounds on top of each other, a lot of things become less noticeable. And a lot of your favorite songs are actually terrible recordings. But they're great songs,
Yeah.
right? So you don't notice the recording, you notice the song. And I would say most listeners, if you're recording a good song, they're not even gonna notice the mistakes, or the imperfections or the inconsistencies. No one cares.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
So obviously we're not a multi-million-dollar studio with all of the gear. We don't have a huge mic locker.
Right.
We have a couple of my mics. We've got the mics that we have laying around the church. We don't have optimally treated environment to record in. So in the do-it-yourself environment, were there any limitations that you noticed, that it was a challenge to work through, or was everything just great?
In the do-it-yourself, it's a lot of it has to do with just set up and tear down. That's the most time consuming. You go to a recording studio, it's there, it's ready, it's available, get after it. But when you are doing it yourself at your house or at your church, or at your church it's a lot easier, but at the house I don't have a dedicated spot to set everything up and keep it set up all the time. So I'm whipping out my audio interface and my mics and the cables and all that stuff repeatedly. So when it comes to just the recording process, that's honestly the most time consuming. It takes 15, 20 minutes sometimes to set it all up, and then 15, 20 minutes to take it all back down and put it all where it's supposed to go. So when you're obviously at home, married, kids and stuff like that, those are all factors to consider. But as far as equipment is concerned, I don't have $20,000 mics, but that's not the emphasis that you want to place. Just if you work on having a good recording and just doing well, then it's going to come out. It's going to come out nice. So as far as overcoming those challenges, I wouldn't say there's anything I had to do in the recording process with the DIY, but just with setup and tear down, that's something that's never going to change. So it's good to have a church available to knock out those recordings.
So one of the limitations that I can think of is like my studio is treated. I mean, it's got some sound treatment, but there's still like a little bit of there was a little bit of flutter echo in one of the takes, in one of the vocal takes, and you ended up. I thought was notable. You ended up recording the final vocal takes at home with an SM7B and a cloud lifter on your Scarlett.
Yeah.
And those are the takes we ended up using.
Yeah, that's helpful to have, right? Like you don't have to travel to your church all the time. If you have a mic and you can just pull out and find an area at your home, very helpful, easy,
I think it's notable that you don't have to have a nice space.
Yeah.
Because Sam's living room is just a living room. It's just a living room, and it just happened to have a microphone in it.
Yeah.
At the time. So, and you'll hear how the vocals turned out. They turned out good. So, I just wanted to add that overcoming challenges doesn't have to be some massive effort. It can be as simple as pick a decent mic, get in a quiet spot, and just go for it.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's a notable thing to say because one, we have this idea that unless we are in a multi-million-dollar studio, then we can't produce music. It's not going to sound good. We're always going to have our limitations. We're never going to meet the standard, and that's just not the case. Especially when it comes to worship music, God isn't judging us based on how much money we put into it. It's we want to come with in spirit and in truth. We want to be doing what we can with what we have and give an honest, we want to give our best worship that we can to the Lord. And it literally just being in a church setting, recording the way that we have, like, it shows that, okay, you don't need to have these, this multi-million-dollar industry producing your music. You can quite literally accomplish it in your own church, and just getting time with repetitions will get you to a point where you want to be. It may not sound the best the first time, but that's why we do repetitions. It's the same thing with just music in general. I might not be the best pianist or guitar player or drummer, but the more time that I have, the more repetitions I do, the better it's going to sound over time. It's just the same thing with this recording, and that's something I've learned through this process. Is I did not start off at the tip of the spear with recording, but the more that I do it, I'm catching myself not making as many mistakes. I'm seeing how things flow together more adequately, and I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to feel way more competent, and even to start even doing stuff with people that are looking to find people to record and mix their music. So I highly appreciate this course for that aspect alone. Dave was great as a teacher. The best.
So there was a lot of what I've encountered, having run a small home studio for years, is that people really want to feel like they're having that big studio experience. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I don't know what's. I think approaching this with some humility is good. You don't need that kind of feeling like we're not pop stars. We're not trying to be. We're not supposed to be that. We're supposed to be set apart. So the way that we do things should not be looking like the rest of the world is doing, and the product that comes out should not look like the product that the rest of the world is doing. And so if that is a feeling that you need, that kind of like, I want to just feel like I'm just immersed in the studio, I'd honestly just encourage you to check your heart and why is that a necessity? What is driving that force? Is it more about me and what I want to do, or is really what I'm trying to do be an adequate offering to the Lord? Because you have the ability to do it. It's just a matter of you willing to humble yourself and get after the process with what God has given you and blessed you with at your church and at your home.
Awesome. So having gone through, we've done a lot together, not just recording these videos, but we've worked together offline a lot. How was I as a teacher? Honest, give me all the feet, just give it to me. Patient,
you're definitely patient. I had a lot of questions that I could very have well been perceived as foolish, coming to a guy that's been doing this for decades. Like, you're very competent with what you do. You're a competent musician. There's a lot of things you can nitpick, and you could, but you didn't. You focus on getting the basics right. We did all the repetitions that were needed to get the foundations established to set me up for success in going off and essentially doing this on my own. And hopefully one day teaching others how to do the same thing, especially in a church setting. Dave is very competent. He's very patient. He's very graceful, helpful on and offline, right? We're obviously friends, so like able to text him and just answer all the questions, provide literature as needed, literally getting in the studio and doing what could have been considered sometimes mundane, but is a necessity for like a long-term goal in producing music. So very helpful, great friend, competent, patient, and graceful.
Aw.
Don't let it go to your head, Dave.
Thanks. That was very kind. I forwarded him the questions, but he didn't give me the answers yet. So. I was ready for it.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Is there anything else you would like to add to the discussion?
Yes. I want to reiterate that this is not as scary as you think it is. It's not as hard as you think it is. That it is going to take time. There's going to be failures. There's going to be frustrations, but don't let that deter you from learning this process. This is something that if you really labor into it, you really take your time, you're patient with it, you're humble in your approach. And remember, people go to school for this stuff. Like, they literally pay money to learn how to do these processes that you're learning here in a church setting. So be patient, be humble with the approach, take your time, be okay with failing, be okay with things not sounding the way that you want it to in the very beginning. Do look at this in a long-term goal, hit those repetitions, and you are going to get the product that you were looking for. Let Christ be your focus. Don't let the album be the end goal. Don't let the production be the end goal. Don't let your stardom even be part of the process at all. Let your focus be that you want to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, that your desire is to bring God-honoring music to the church, not just in your setting, but in the people that you interact with across the country and hopefully across the world. We want to create music that is glorifying to God. And that's going to take time. It's going to take work. We're going to fail. We're going to have setbacks, but just be patient with it. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with the people that you're with. And you're going to, and I promise you at that point, you will get to where you want to be.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. Thanks, Sam.
Absolutely.
Thanks for talking, and
Yeah.
I'll see you next time.
All right.
All right, thanks for checking out my interview with Sam. Again, I hope you found it informative or entertaining or at least mildly amusing. Again, you can check out worshiprecordingacademy.com/memberships and hop on that special beta membership. God bless.